Secretary Scott Besant has announced that the United States Federal Reserve will double its purchasing of US bonds from 2 billion a month to 4 billion a month. What does this mean? Hey everybody, welcome back to another beautiful day in real estate. We're going to dissect a little bit about the bond market and why crypto actually pumped a significant amount over the last 2 days. But before we do, we're going to touch on SpaceX because this is a very important one that we've talked about a few times. We talked about SpaceX as soon as it hit the IPO. We said don't buy. We said it was going to find a bottom right where around it did, and then we were going to see a minor little pump. So let's pull up the screen. So like we've always explained, IPOs, you have the hype out the door. That's retail investors. Then the inside buyers, inside investors, they sell off. You see a little pump, and it sells off again. Now, what typically happens is it forms its first major bottom, which was right around $100 a share, $108 a share, and then you see it pump to its most recent support, turning into resistance. We called this exactly 2AT. We called it $111 a share. We said it was going to make it to about 149. It literally bounced off of 149, maybe making it to 150, and now we're starting to see a little bit of a consolidation back down. What typically happens, you have the investors come in, retail investors, the market pumps. Then you have the inside traders that sell off some of their shares, pumps a little bit, they sell off their shares again. And then when the volume hits its lowest point, which it did right around here, it starts to have interest for leverage traders. Leverage traders come in and they push the market as best they can. And as you can see, the stochastic RSI made its way to overbought, and now it's starting to trickle back down. Same thing with the RSI. We saw a strong movement, and now it's starting to fall off again. So my expectation is more than likely we're going to see SpaceX start to fall back down. It might not hit $108 a share again, but more than likely you're going to see it fall down to at least 120 to 115 range. This isn't a guarantee, but these charts are usually getting a lot more predictable. Now, let's jump into oil real quick, and then we'll talk about Bitcoin and bonds. So first thing here, oil, as we talked about, is making a nice little move. We said we might see a little bit more upward action, a little bit. It's starting to kind of showcase that it's bouncing off of this downward trend line. We'll find out today a little bit more on the specs on it just to see how we're sitting. But more than likely, we're seeing the stochastic being overbought, and we're starting to see that the RSI is weakening before it can even get into the overbought positioning. And that just means to me that we're running out of volume to push up. And this, by the way, is a spot Brent crude oil on the daily chart. This is always an important thing to touch on. And this is WTI. As you can tell, though, they follow close to the same patterns. The difference is you'll notice that there's a bigger swing in Brent crude than there is in WTI. I mean, there's still a fair swing, but these charts look almost identical because, well, they're trading similar product, right? But again, more than likely from what I'm seeing, we're going to see a rejection off of this downward trend line, and it's going to come back down into consolidation. $78 a share, maybe 74, but I'm going to stick with the $78 a share currently. Until we see some major negative news. So that's kind of where we're sitting on oil. Now let's talk about Bitcoin and bonds. So bonds actually in the last 2 days fell off a cliff pretty significantly. And people don't think this is a big move, but this is the bond market. So a 2% move down, almost 3 is actually a pretty big and strong move in the bond market. Well, what happened? Well, Scott Besant came out and announced that they are now going to be buying double the amount of bonds that they were buying last month. They were buying $2 billion in bonds a month to essentially help crutch the market. The market was looking very, very weak. We were seeing the higher the yields get, meaning the less buyers that are out there. When the less buyers are out there, the higher the yields, the higher the interest rates for the average American person. And bonds haven't been very appealing for a lot of countries for a long time. You notice that Japan was one of our largest bond holders and sold the majority of our bonds to actually sustain their own. They continue to build the interest rates higher and higher and higher. And what had happened in the past is in the Japanese bond or the Japanese interest rate was down below almost 2.0 and very close to 0 in a lot of cases. So what investors would do is they would go and borrow against those, and then they would leverage that money to buy U.S. bonds because U.S. bonds you could make anywhere from 3 to 4%. Well, now that that is no longer or starting to become less and less pertinent, money is now flowing back directly into the Japanese market rather than the United States market. So right now it's very scarce. Everything feels very, very scarce. People feel uncomfortable. They feel unsafe. They feel like there's nothing that we can really look forward to. Why is that? It's because everything continues to get more expensive. And the reason it's getting more expensive is because of the cracks in the United States financial system. We've devaluated the dollar continuously for years. And now that it's lost about 98% of its value, you're seeing them look for different avenues. And why is that important? Well, I'm going to drag you back into the Clarity Act here. The Clarity Act is a framework for the crypto and blockchain space. Now, let's get a cup of coffee going today. I'm a little tired. But basically, the Clarity Act is going to give direct action to what we're going to be expecting. All right, let's get rid of this. We're going to get direct action to how we're going to be regulating the crypto world. Now, a lot of you that haven't been paying attention, they just launched and got approval that Robinhood can now trade 24 hours, 23 hours a day, 5 days a week. We've talked about that a long time ago. That was like one of my first videos where I said that stocks are going to have to get digitalized and start running on a 24-hour basis trading system. This is the first step. The Clarity Act. The Clarity Act actually gives understanding on how you can use cryptocurrencies. Stablecoins are a very important piece to this puzzle. Now, we had the, not the Clarity Act, what was the other one that passed? Oh boy, the Genius Act. There we go. The Genius Act was the regulation behind stablecoins. Now, for those of you that have been in the space for a long time, crypto has always seen these massive bull and massive bear markets, and we're starting to get to the end of that bear market. And the reasoning is because when you see money starting to flow back into the U.S. economy, that's when more people are looking for those risky assets like Bitcoin, those risky assets like low cap stocks. You're going to start to see different pumps in different places. It's not going to all be at once because we're not actually in a full-fledged bull market yet. But you're going to see certain stocks and certain cryptos that are going to pump significantly. Moderna was one that went up 300% in 3 days just because I shouldn't say just, but because they had a successful injection for a product for cancer, basically helping to cure cancer. It was a specific kind of cancer, but either way, nonetheless, it was one of those things where they found a product now, or have a product now, that can actually cure a very, very dangerous disease. So we're starting to transition as the Clarity Act becomes more popular. People are starting to focus more on that market. You're going to see, and we have seen, a lot of big investors like Citibank and BlackRock and other companies that are massive investing in the investor space that are pushing for the passing of the Clarity Act because they want to be able to utilize that technology. 4 years ago, you were hearing anybody from JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon saying it's Bitcoin's a pet rock, it's useless to, you got Larry Fink over at BlackRock that has been talking shit about Bitcoin for a long time, but now they own significant amount of Bitcoin. They own a majority shares in Strategy B. They own ETFs, and you're seeing money flow back into these ETFs because, again, as I've said before, we're moving towards the midterms, and then during the midterms, and especially if the conservative side wants to take lead on it, they have to show positivity in the world. They can't just be hearsay conversation. They're going to show and push as much as they can. And for those of you that don't know, they actually sent a special date on September 15th for the U.S. Senate to vote on the Clarity Act. They want to stay at the innovator of the crypto space. And crypto always gets miscolluded with, meme coins and buy and sell, these things that have no value. But what people don't know, and what they're starting to realize, we're starting to see, is now more and more and more companies, people, governments, they're starting to see the value behind blockchain, because blockchain is a technology that's going to advance the way that we operate. Now, utilizing that is bringing it into a stablecoins world. Stablecoins are essentially your digital dollar, right? Which you've already had that digital dollar for a long time. Venmo, Cash App, you can pay with Apple Pay, Google Pay, Samsung Pay. All of these companies were already implementing a style of crypto and digital currency for a time. And now they're transitioning into a regulatory framework where they can actually call it that. And the same thing happened with the debit and credit cards. I remember watching an interview. Somebody was buying a burger at Burger King in early 2000s with a credit card. And, some people were on board, but most weren't. They didn't like the idea. But now we use it every single day. And that's the same thing that we're seeing with this sort of technology. It's why I'm so heavily invested into it, because you're not going to always pick all the winners. That's for sure. But what you can do is you can utilize a focus of, okay, if a logical circuit, I'll say that, right? So if you look at a company, any company, whether it's crypto or stocks, you want to look at it as, is it going to be here in 10 years? Is it providing value? Is it doing what it's saying? Is it got good CEOs behind it? Is there money backing it? What product are they pushing out? That's what I have seen, and I'm witnessing that product is starting to become very important. I've said it before. You're going to have digitalized deeds for your home, digitalized titles for your cars. I don't think we're even going to have a full physical wallet by 2030. We're going to have digital IDs. We're seeing that being implemented here in North Dakota. We're seeing the digital dollars, right? The digital wallets, right? Apple Pay. Apple Pay, people use Apple Pay all the time. Half the time I forget my wallet at this point. I just use Apple Pay because we're transitioning into a new kind of world. And that starts with new technology. So you're not even seeing as much news about the war, the Strait of Hormuz, or any of that anymore. Now it's mainly focused on crypto. And I definitely think that there's going to be a major push to pass that Clarity Act right before midterms, because when the Clarity Act passes, as you can see, Bitcoin has been ready to run for a hot minute. We've seen the bottoming right around that $58,000, and now it's back up to 76, I want to say, 76, almost 77,000, because the market's pumping. It went up, what, 26% in one day, and then my other one, Chainlink, went up 59% in 2 days. Why? Well, it's going up because there's confidence behind it again. There's credibility behind it. And they had Robinhood speak, the CEO of Robinhood speak at the White House this last week. They had Ben Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase speak, and there was also an event at the White House that implemented, Kraken, Coinbase, Chainlink, because they are now talking about transitioning. They are transitioning to a new banking system, a different world. And that's why you saw JP Morgan and you saw these big banks pushing back on the Clarity Act, because right now you make 0.01312% on your money in a bank. But with the Clarity Act, they're giving you the ability to put your money in stable coins, which is still safe, not exactly extremely safe, right? Like, there's always going to be risk involved, but you can see a 5 to 7% interest rate. A lot of people are not beating inflation right now. That's a way to beat inflation. But a lot of majority investors, big time investors, and I always get a chuckle from this because I always tell people that I want to be in front of the big investors. I'm like, well, what's the difference? I'm like, the difference is an investor with $20 million versus $1 million is going to look at things completely different. They're looking at the facts. They're looking at the potential profit. They're looking at the risk versus reward ratio. Somebody with that larger sum of money, nothing wrong with it, nothing at all. But they're going to be more focused on an emotional standpoint for investing. So, but another video for another day. So what I saw is I saw Bitcoin pump. I saw some of my altcoins pump, and it's making me feel a lot more confident that we're starting to see a bottom forming in the crypto world. The volume itself is actually pretty significant. And I'll show you this real quick before we hop off today. But as you can see, this is XRP. Look at the amount of volume that came in the last 3 days versus the last 6 months. We haven't seen volume like this. Positive buying volume in, well, let's just go back and find it. The last time we saw volume significantly was right about here, and that was right before we saw a major run. Now, how far of a run did we go? This was a 454% increase in crypto for XRP. So I'm not saying that we're there yet, but the volume itself is a tall tale that we're actually seeing a fair amount of people come back into the space. And the reasoning people are coming back into the space is because confidence is rising. And as we see that, 59% increase in the last couple of weeks. We've been doing very well on this one. We've been buying this one for the last, 4 years. I buy Bitcoin every single day. My Bitcoin right now is actually doing pretty well as well, because we've been buying all the way down. We've been buying in the lows. We've been buying extra in the bottoms. We're seeing that. So I guess, to wrap up the video, right now, the bond market is starting to see more money inflow. With more money inflowing, you're going to expect to see the yields go down. With yields going down, interest rates follow. And they're going to be pushing that moving into midterms. Again, because right now we're seeing the lowest amount of buyers in this market that we've ever seen in history. So they have to find a reason and a way to keep people on the side of team conservative. And I'm not one or the other, really. I don't give a shit. I focus on economics. I focus on what we're seeing. And right now, this is the game that they play. This is the game that they play. Every time you get close to midterm elections, the side who needs to win or feels like they need to win is going to push, or that is dominant, to continue to keep power. So, over 50% of the seats in the state and Senate are held at a Republican basis. So for them to continue to bulldog their way through the next 2 years, they need to see those seats retained, if not adding more seats to their side. So moving into midterms, expect volatility in the market. I'm actually going to expect some positive things in the market these next few months. We're in August. Midterms are in November. We're going to see this month, next month, and probably into October, we're going to see the market start to pump right before midterms. We're going to see something happen. September 15th is going to be a very important date, so mark your calendars, because what happens with the Clarity Act is actually going to dictate the way that the market's going to react for the next 6 months. And it sounds silly, but it's coming. So thanks for watching. If you made it this far, make sure to like and follow. We'll see you next week. Have a great day.